Good, family. Want to welcome you guys back to another episode of Growing Pains, the #1 place for melanated people like me. We're looking to acquire real estate and live a life of abundance. So if it's your first time here, make sure you stay tuned and watch the whole video. If you like what you hear, smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, and make sure you share with friends and family who are looking to do the same or at least like-minded. So you can stay tuned, hit that notification bell so you can watch the videos to come. This is where we're at. We're talking about paying yourself first. So stay tuned. Love y'all. Good, family, welcome back. Briefly, before we get into this, I wanted to basically just briefly discuss with you and what I mean by paying yourself first. Basically, it means to invest in self, right? So that means your health, your mental, and also your finances, right? So let's break it down. One thing someone close to me always told me, right? They would rather spend more money for their food so that they're not paying the doctors 10 to 20 more times as much, right? Due to your health problems and issues, understanding that our culture, especially in this nation here, a lot of our issues and a lot of our deaths really come from the bad eating, our health issues, right? So we need to understand that it's necessary to make sure our health is correct, because if it's not, it doesn't matter how much money you make, you won't be here to spend it, right? So understand that our health is necessary. We need to focus on it, make sure we're eating the right foods so that we're not paying those doctors so much money to save us, right? When we could be saving ourselves from the jump. Second, speaking on your mental, right? A lot of us deal with a lot of pain, a lot of issues, a lot of different things that honestly is just not normal in our culture. Or I should say is normal in our culture, but it's not normal for you. It's not normal in general, right? It's not something we should be going through, but we normalize it because we've been going through so much of it for generations to come, right? So one thing is making sure we get that mental right. So we're talking about therapy. Maybe you just finding an outlet within friends and family, making sure you know who you're talking to, because that matters as well. You might get advice from the wrong people, so that's why I suggest more so professional. But at the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do. But please make sure you get an outlet or a way to speak to somebody to get a better understanding of yourself and what's going on in your head. It's necessary. Along with that, investing in your mental also means to take time and study, learn, right? Whatever it is you might enjoy, whatever, especially as we're talking about real estate here, making sure you're putting in the time beyond this, right? The video is cool. You get a little insight, but at the end of the day, the work starts with you. So you need to start somewhere, right? So making sure you're investing in yourself, whether it's you spending a couple bucks to learn a little bit more, or at the end of the day, for most of it, there's enough content out there where you can learn for free, but you need to be wary of who you're learning from. All right. One of my major helps, or I should say, one of the things that helped impacted me really was Bigger Pockets. And I'll make sure I'll add a description below. Definitely a good place to start. But for me, anyways, paying yourself started with one book for me called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And with that book, it basically kind of solidified and built my foundation, I should say, for real estate, right? So beyond learning assets and liabilities and the difference between the two, cash flow has been my focus. It's been my platform. It's been what started this all for me. So at the end of the day, focusing on cash flow, basically to replace your income, looking for that passive income, right? So that's what I'm doing here. I'm building and I'm acquiring enough properties so that it's pushing enough cash flow so that it basically takes care of me, right? That's what you want your money to do, to take care of yourself, right? So that's another thing. Along with it, our finances, right? In order to get our finances right, we need to understand where our money is going, understanding to a T, right? And this is something I do every month at the start of every month. That's why I say paying yourself first, right? So you're not physically paying yourself some cash money at the beginning of the month, because we all do have bills, right? You got your rent and mortgage due on the first, following by everything else. So it might not be that easy to actually pay yourself first, especially if the money isn't there yet, right? Because you're still working towards it. So for a lot of us, this is what you start with. When I mean paying yourself, it means mentally I'm paying myself first, because I'm aware of what I have left at the end or could have left at the end, right? So let's get into this part of my back to you guys real quick. For a lot of us working W-2 jobs, this might look a little different if you're getting paid bi-weekly, right? So at the end of the day, you still come to the same total. It doesn't matter truly. For some of us also as well, You might be, on your own business, or you might be commissioned out, right, doing some type of sales job. So at the end of the day, maybe you're not getting the same amount every week, but you can work the same system and understand and actually save a portion of whatever percentage you're getting every month, right? But for those of us who do work 40-hour, weeks, or at the end of the day, you're basically seeing the same amount every week or every bye-week, for the most part, unless you're doing a little overtime, which you should be, right? But at the end of the day, let's break this down, right? We have our in and our out, basically meaning our income and our expenses, right? So we have our W-2 job working 4 weeks. Sometimes you get a bonus of the 5th week, but that should be a bonus to you or a bonus to your savings. So stay on point with that as well. So there's really no excuse to say you don't have any money at the end of the month. You're doing something wrong. But here we go. We got 4 weeks within the month, totaling up to 4K, right? On this side here, being our expenses, what's going out of our pocket, we have our rent, mortgage for whoever, for whatever the case is, our car payment, gas, electric, cable, phone bill, right? And for you, this list might be a little bit longer, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because it's going to total up to what it totals up. So only make sure you're putting necessities on here, not the things that you feel like you need to have. Make sure it's only necessities. As we see here, right, we got a balance here. At the end of the month, we're bringing in 4K. At the end of this month, we're spending 3K, right? But the problem for most of us, this is opposite, right? And that's where you're messing up, right? This is opposite for you. And that's a problem, right? Because at the end of the day, you shouldn't be spending more than you're making, all right? But in order to correct that, some of you might need to downgrade, right? You might need to get a cheaper apartment, a smaller house, whatever the case may be. This car payment here, right? You don't all need foreigns, right? So you might need a downgrade, get something reliable, along with this here, right? Cable. It's a deadly one, right? Because your mind is becoming zombified, just like the phone does to you, right? At the end of the day, it's only making you dumber, and it's not something we truly need. I definitely understand we need entertainment time to time, but this is not something you should be dwelling your life in every day after work because you work so hard, right? Most of y'all don't really truly work so hard, so it is what it is. But at the end of the day, there's ways and there's things to get rid of that we don't truly need in order to balance this sheet, right? But let's just say everything is okay in the hood, right? Or everything is okay in our household, and we're actually doing okay, right? We're making a little bit more than we're actually spending. So just using this as a reference here. So now we have at the end of this, 4K minus 3K, what does that leave us with? 1,000, right? So with $1,000 at the end of every month, what should we be doing with it, right? For me, I was a little more aggressive with it. So I was like, if this was my example here, right, I was saving that full 1,000, right? Because I could live below my means. I'm cool with it. I don't need much to live. And I understand that where I'm trying to go is going to be better than this current outcome of what I'm living now, right? So at the end of the day, excuse the break in the voice, right? It is what it is. But anyways, right? So now we're left with $1,000, right? At the end of the day, what are we doing with that? If you don't want to be fully aggressive in saving the whole thing, right? We all do have needs, right? You might want to take 500 of that, put that to the side, right? Put that in an investment account. So basically you're saving for investments. Left with 500 after that. Let's say we take 250 and you put that into another account for your savings for rainy days, because there will always be rainy days, especially in this business here. One thing I think a lot of people don't really truly understand, they think of investors, they think of landlords, and they think they're just rich, right? It's not. It's something that can definitely clearly make you rich, right? But one thing people don't highly truly understand is, right, for most of us, we're only making about $100 to $200 a door, right? That's honestly, I shoot for a minimum of 200 a door. So that means basically every apartment, every door, I want to be making a cash flow, right? Minus the expenses being paid, right? I want to make sure I'm seeing at least $200 from that unit alone, right? Some people see less, some break even, some lose, right? But we're not going to be that person, right? We're going to do it the smart way. We're going to make sure we understand our numbers and understand what we're trying to do and what we're trying to get to before we even submit an offer. So the numbers have to make sense. It's all about the numbers, right? But one thing is, when it came down to it, saving for a rainy day is necessary. You could easily get into a building and you're making a cash flow the year, let's say for the year, you've made a little bit of change, and then something goes, right? Like a boiler, hot water heater, and boom, like that, all that cash flow gone. And that's truly how it is, right? Until you get into larger buildings, it changes. But at the end of the day, with that last 250, let's just go ahead and say you can spend that, right? Go ahead and bless yourself with whatever gifts you would like, or if you want to bless someone else, but we want to make sure that we're staying on point. We're watching our money and understanding where it's going, and not just throwing it away, especially to the economy that is not doing much for you. So we're talking about generational wealth, length. At the end of the day, you do this, I promise you will definitely be financially good at some point, right? Even if you're not making much now and there's you're negative or whatever the case is, understand just getting this down packed will get you to the right place, right? A little thing about me, right? One thing is, I grew up like most of us, right? For most of us, we grow up in single parent households. Honestly, for me, it was more like a single parent studio. For me, it was me, my mom, my sister living in the studio apartment to whatever age, right? And I'm grateful for that at the end of the day, right? Because I'm sure my mom could have received some type of government assistance, or we all had our own bedroom, right? But we most likely would have been in the projects, would have been in the hood. And even though that studio apartment was only a couple blocks from the hood, but it was outside of it, right? There's a big difference, especially for a young black man with no father figure at home. Along with that, your parents, or your mom, I should say, right, is working multiple jobs, so she's not home. Easily left for the streets raising you. And guess what? What happens as a bored young male? You're willing to be out there doing just nonsense, right? And then, especially if the streets are showing you love, you seek that love, you take that love, and then you're doing things because you're loyal to those people who are loyal to you. So that's usually how a lot of our youth gets into trouble, just due to boredom, truly. But understanding, right, that at the end of the day, due to the fact that I didn't have to rest my head, in the projects, is a big difference. Even though we were still so close, even though the streets still had a touch on the way I grew up, at the end of the day, there was a big difference actually resting your head there, having to go through that, deal with a certain type of crowd and different gangs or whatever the case might be, right, all in there. But truly, just fast forward, my mom remarried, and my stepfather introduced me to a broker. Broker basically kind of just bridged the gap between you and the lender. Basically, they're working strictly for commission. So they're looking for a loan for you. So they usually have a big pocket of just different lenders and things they're trying to seek for you, right? But I called that person up I was about 24 at the time, probably making roughly around 38 to 40K. Not the best, but not the worst, right? And I was pre-approved for a house. That simple. I just called them up, boom, 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 credit check, this, that, and the third, and I was pre-approved. And honestly, I wasn't approved for much. It is what it is, but it got me started. And that's what we're doing here, just getting started. You need to get started, because if I didn't start then, trust me, everything that I'm building now, all the equity I have, all the, right now I'm looking for 15 to 30 unit buildings. So this wouldn't have happened if I never started. So the first thing we're doing is getting started, and it starts here. Along with that, right now, 24 going on 25, I was able to finally find a place, and I bought my first rental, being a duplex in a college neighborhood, great cash flow to this day. But one thing I just want to introduce you guys to, or help you understand, it didn't take much, right? Because there's different types of loans, that are out here, like FHA, which is for first-time home buyers by the federal government. Along with that, there's also other, payments and other ways where you're doing less than the FHA. I believe FHA is 3.5% down. I've dealt with other programs. I've been introduced to other programs where there's 0% down, so there's a lot of avenues and ways to get started. But truly, basically what I'm getting at is the fact that I was able to get into that property with just less than $12,000. Literally, we're talking about closing costs, down payment, and whatever fees, inspections, and things like that I had to pay for it, but less than $12,000. Now today, man, that property is making cash flowing $1,000 monthly. So it was just the fact that I got started that put me in this position here. But anyways, I was living on one side, renting the other. Eventually moved out and moved on and acquired more. But basically that was the start point, right? So that's what I want for you guys, to basically acquire a property and house hack is what they call it in a way now, right? Where you're living on one side or living on, you know, whatever level. It could be 2, 3. You are with FHA, you're able to get up to 4 units. Tune to the next video. Peace and love.